I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Township of Aldridge Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, May 2, 2019. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Aldridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, finally by filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Ms. Overland, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dewhurst?
Here.
Ms. Chevalier? Here. Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Kilduff?
Here.
Mr. Spugno?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Stoner?
Here.
Chairman Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Carey? Mrs. Shapiro? Here. Ms. Sawant? Here. Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Lavallo?
Here.
Board members and those in the audience and those watching at home, we welcome Attorney Kelly Carey, who's the planning board attorney, who will be sitting and representing us tonight. Mr. Sachs has stepped down for his recusing himself on this matter this evening. And I ask all in attendance and those in the courtroom, if you have a cell phone on, please mute it so you don't interrupt. It is being recorded, and the stenographer will be taking all this down verbatim. So we don't want to interrupt that, so please mute your cell phones. We are on TV. The TV goes off at 10:30. 10 o'clock, I'm sorry. I don't anticipate that we will be here that late tonight, but if you're watching at home, and we do go beyond that, which I doubt, it does have to go off at 10 p.m. All right, having said that, I'll move on to item 2 on the agenda. It's escrow deficiency resolution. There's one. It's 18-18C, Rickett of NJ Inc. It's for $900. Someone want to move it?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff?
Yes.
Mr. Spugno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Item number 3 is the minutes, board members, from March 7, 2019. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review them, absent any commentary or suggestions for additions or deletions, and ask someone to move them in the organization.
I'll move them. Second.
Moved in second. Roll.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff?
Yes.
Mr. Spugno?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Board members, this brings us to our only application that's on item number 4 on the agenda. It's 30-18C. It's 3150 Bordentown Realty LLC. It's located in the SD3 zone. The location is Bordentown Turnpike. We do have a number. What is it? Well, we'll get to that. The application was the applicant will occupy a portion of the existing building for prep and repair or vehicle inventory to be stored on site in connection with existing truck dealership in Centerville. This is for a major preliminary and final site plan with D&C variance. George Pressler, Esquire, will be on behalf of the applicant. Sir?
Good evening, Mr. Sullivan, members of the board. My name is George Pressler. I am an attorney at law of the state of New Jersey with offices in East Brunswick. I represent the applicant. The applicant, as Mr. Sullivan has pointed out, is applying for a minor site plan approval. It is located, the subject premises is located at 3150 Bordentown Avenue, also known as block number 5001 in lot 4.18 on the official tax map of Aldridge. The property is also located in an SD3 special development zone, and the property is approximately 5 acres or more. Aside from the site plan approval, the applicant is also seeking a D3 conditional use variance to permit, as Mr. Sullivan correctly pointed out, automobile and truck repairs within the redesigned garage and bays. Of course, the thrust of this application is a use variance. However, the applicant is also requesting certain waivers for aisle width, stall length, and stall width. And I should point out at this point, there will be absolutely no changes to the existing building. Only the interior of the building is going to be modified to satisfy the stalls and the operation of the repairs of motor vehicles. Also, it should be noted at page 4 and 5 of the report from the town, almost everything is conforming. However, there are several non-conforming pre-existing pre-existing problems that exist that require a bulk variance. So there are a couple of bulk variances that our planner will address along with the use variance and the site plan. And with that being said, with me tonight is our engineer and planner. He has a dual role, Mark Lieber, and I'd like to bring him before the before the board and have him sworn.
Thank you, Mr. Pressler. Board Attorney, swear you in, sir.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
It's Mark with a C, and my last name is Lieber, L-E-B-E-R.
Qualify him as,
Would you set forth for the board your qualifications? For
Yes.
both planning and engineering.
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Drexel University. I have a graduate degree from Rutgers and licensed in New Jersey as a professional engineer. I'm also licensed as a professional planner, and I have a certified municipal engineering certificate. I've testified before dozens of boards throughout Middlesex, Monmouth, in fact, the whole state of New Jersey. Both planning boards and zoning boards. I've been before this board previously. I've also been before the planning board in Old Bridge, and our office is in Marlborough.
Mr. Lieber has been before our board. We recognize him and wanted those at home to hear from him. We accept his credentials.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
in order to address the engineering and planning aspects, tonight I'm going to go in a specific order. I'm first going to introduce you to the site, then we're going to review some photographs that were taken earlier today. Next, we'll discuss the proposed use and why a variance is necessary. And then finally, we'll go over the purposes of zoning and discuss the positives and the negatives of the application. If at any time you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me. So first of all, the property in question is Block 5001. It's Lot 4.18. It's known as 3150 Bordentown Avenue, and it's in the SD3 zone. This lot's about 5.4 acres in size, and it's set back over 600 feet from Bordentown Avenue. It's only accessible through a private driveway that's in an easement, and you have to climb a hill to reach the top of the where this property begins. If we go to the photos,
Which one, you want the first one?
yeah. Here we go. Downloading. Sideways. Can you rotate it?
Board, if you just tilt your head to the left, you'll be able to see these better.
On the right side, hit edit. Edit PDF on the.
I mean, you said a hill, but I didn't realize it was that steep.
No. All right, just X. All right. Okay, so here we go. So the top photo is of the entrance drive, which is off of Bordentown Avenue. And when you reach the top of the entrance drive, which is more or less the bottom photo, you'll start to see a pavement area which leads up to the building. And if we go to sheet number 2, I'll show you photos of the front of this building and the existing parking lot that's there now. Open.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but are we going to mark these as like a slideshow packet, or you want to mark each page?
There's 7 pages.
7 pages, a packet of 7 pages of photos
Okay,
taken today by yourself?
yes.
Okay.
Clockwise. Okay, so the top photo is the existing building. You'll notice there's a parking lot in the front, and it's kind of split in half. There's a grass area in between, and then beyond that, there's a second parking lot. On the bottom, you'll see the left side of the building. You'll notice that there's some storefront glass doors on the left, and in the center of the building is an overhead door, and then on the right of the building is another overhead door. Let's go one more.
A1.
So the top photo here is me standing at the front right corner of the building, and I'm looking along the building wall, the overhead doors on the right, and directly behind me is an access drive. This is shown in the bottom photo along the right side of the building, and we're going to go down this access drive, and the next page is going to show you what's in the back of the building. All right, so here we are in the back. You'll notice there's a gravel area. You see the building in the distance. And the applicant's actually parking trucks here. You'll see they're, organized more or less in lines. And in the distance, you'll see these overhead doors, which I'm going to get to in a minute when I get into the use. On the bottom photo, you'll notice the fire lane, which goes behind the building. There's a strip of concrete that separates the pavement from the gravel area. And more or less in the back of the property, there's, natural woods and vegetation, and the property falls off pretty steep in the rear. On the next page, we have the back. This is the back left corner of the building. You'll notice there's one trash container that's associated with a use that's occupying that side of the building. And on the bottom photo, you'll see a 30-yard container, which is associated with the use we're here to discuss tonight. These are the only two trash containers on the property, and this is how they handle refuse. I'm going to walk now along the left side of the building and go on to the next page. You'll see where the pavement begins and the gravel ends. And in the top photo, it is a little hard to discern, but on the right side, there's two handicap parking stalls, which are part of the paved parking lot. As we walk up the left side of the building, it brings us back to the front, which is the bottom photo of this page, and I'm back in the parking lot, and the building is literally just to my left.
Where did you say the handicap spots were?
If you look at the top photo, it's hard to discern because maybe you can blow up the photo.
Did you walk the cursor over to it?
Sure. Is there a way to zoom in?
Is it on the right side there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, located right there?
You see where the white pickup truck is in the distance?
Yeah?
They're like closer to me in that photo, but on the right side.
Thank you.
There are two spaces there. I know there's a comment that there would need to be more, which that's okay. But I just want to point out that there were two there
Thank you,
presently.
that's why I wanted to, just so that everyone could know where they were. Thanks.
Okay. So that's the property. I did bring with me a board that's colored, which it'll be easier to describe once it's on the monitor. The way I had colored this is on the left at the top, you'll see in gray, that's the access driveway through the easement that goes down to Bordentown Avenue. And anything you see around the building that's shaded in gray is paved. That's all asphalt. I outlined the building in a heavy red, and in the back, you'll see a white area with a bunch of boxes. That's the gravel area that's there today. One of the aspects of the application is to construct a small stormwater facility at the back of that gravel area, which
Could
is
you
in...
put your board up and
Yeah.
reference it? Thanks.
And this is going to be Exhibit A2, the colorized? A2, yeah. And can you just tell me the date on that?
Okay. So I have the building...
Mr. Lieber?
Yeah, I have five. Oh. Is April 30th, 2018.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay. I outlined the building in red just to make it stand out. And again, everything you see shaded in gray is paved presently. This white area in the back is the area that I showed in the photos where there's trucks being parked. At the extreme rear of that area, we are creating more or less like a small low-lying area to capture some of the runoff from this gravel. And this was part of our engineering review, which there's actually some comments I'm going to get into toward the end of the hearing about that. But again, the runoff from this property is pretty much from west to east, and this would intercept that water before it left the property and went down. There's a hill in the back.
While you're there, would you point out where the handicap spots were on that?
On the north side of the building, there's a 1, 2, 3. The fourth and fifth spaces on the north side are designated handicap.
Just point out the main entrance.
Sure. So when you come up the drive from Bordentown Avenue, there's one main entrance. I want to call it the left side of the building. I guess that would be the north side. And there's a secondary entrance in the south side, which is for the use that we're here tonight to discuss.
You said there's another tenant?
There is. And I have a plan.
Where do they enter? Same place?
No, they have a separate entrance. They enter through the glass doors.
Thank you.
Okay, so the use, Phoenix Trucks is the use. That's a truck dealership. They're located at 6056 Route 35 in South Amboy, and they've been in business over there for 5 years. So as part of their business, they acquire pre-owned and off-lease vehicles, and they recondition them so that the vehicles could be sold at the Route 35 location. So the site plan that we're discussing tonight is actually where the vehicle reconditioning would occur. And it also serves as a place to hold and maintain their inventory. At this property, the hours of operation would be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. There are absolutely no public visitors to this property. They do not transact any sales at this property. There are usually 8 to 10 employees, and that would consist of 5 mechanics, 3 cleanup guys, I guess those would be detailers, and 2 administrative staff. The way that the building is set up, the trucks would be worked on inside the building only and stored on site prior to being transported to Route 35. Now, the trucks are not moved by a traditional car carrier. Each truck is driven under its own power to the property and then driven off the property. They do not store junk vehicles here. They don't do major repairs. They don't replace engines and things like that on this property. As you noticed in the photos, the building is a 1-story with large overhead doors, and that actually makes it perfect for the use because I brought with me tonight a floor plan of the building,
This is the A3.
A3.
Yes.
And I'm going to just describe how the building is being used. 5/2/19.
They have it. Yeah.
Okay.
Give Mr. Hart one, too? You have one, Tom? I'll keep one, pass it down, and I'll pass it back, and I'll give it to this side. Or you may. Need 2 more, 3 more over here. Should be 2 here and 1 for you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Lieber.
Okay, so the building's about 36,400 square feet. At the top of this page, you'll see there's an office area and a warehouse. That's associated with a tenant who's occupying that side of the building. There's a division wall, which I have in a heavy line on the plan. And then the center of the building, you'll see it says open area, 23,440 square feet. On the left and the right of that open area, there's overhead doors. They're kind of garage doors, but they're large. What that enables is the trucks can be driven right into the building, and they can be parked within any of these 15 by 25-foot truck bays, where they would be awaiting either reconditioning or cleaning or something of that nature, and then they could be driven out the back door to be put into inventory, or they could just be driven to Route 35. Similarly, at the bottom, there's a small office area of 1,570 square feet. Adjacent to that, there's a parts area where they maintain an inventory of parts. And once again, on the left side and the right side, you have an overhead door, so trucks can be pulled right into the building, and they can be turned to park into any of these 15 by 25 truck bays. It's one of the reasons why this building is so perfect for this type of use. Now, getting to the variance aspect, and I read the board planner's report, and it's pretty clear in the report that the type of use we're proposing is in fact a conditionally permitted use. Unfortunately, in Chapter 250-41H, Part 4, there's a prohibition that doesn't permit vehicles from being parked on the premises other than those used by employees or customer vehicles awaiting repair. So we can't comply with that aspect of the code, so therefore we need conditional use variance relief. Otherwise, that's a D3 variance. To our benefit, because the use is already in your ordinance as a conditionally permitted use, it's really not necessary to go through exhaustive, enhanced proofs and testimonies to, why the ordinance didn't include this as a permitted use when it was written, but we rather only have to address the portion of the code which we can't comply with. And then we will finally go over the positives and negatives with regard to the public impacts. Are there any questions so far?
No, go right ahead, sir. We'll wait, the board will normally go to the professionals, then the board members will have any questions they have, and then we'll go to the public.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
So when we look at zoning and variances, we always start at the same place, which is, what is the purpose of zoning? And the town has a chapter 250-2, which clearly describes the intent and purpose of zoning. And in fact, in Old Bridge, they have sections A all the way through double B. So it's pretty extensive. And these types of purposes, I'll touch upon a few of them just to give you some background. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands within the boundary of the township in a manner that will promote and protect the public health, safety, morals, and welfare, to provide adequate light, air, and open space, to establish population densities and concentrations which are compatible with well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and the region. I'm sure you've heard these before, but we always start off with variance testimony to describe what the purpose of zoning is. When you go through each and every item, it's basically concluding that zoning is about setting aside areas where certain types of uses are either clustered together or separated to limit negative impacts resulting from uses that are not compatible with each other. So for example, outside of the city, we generally don't build a factory next door to houses, just like we don't seek to locate a new house on a state highway. That's about, separating incompatible uses. Now, in Old Bridge, there's actually specific language pertaining to the SD3 zone, which this application is part of, that the purpose of that zone is to establish areas which will provide new development opportunities for large-scale service and light manufacturing uses with appropriate supporting facilities. So if you look within the SD3 zone as to what's permitted, it's probably like the most flexible zone in the entire town. I mean, you have everything from hotels, motels, food processing, textile mills, furniture manufacturing, paper goods. You can have printing, metal fabrication. It does state motor vehicle transportation and aircraft transportation. You can have a parking garage, communications, utilities. I mean, it's very broad. You can have limited retail. It does allow auto sales, bars, service businesses, warehousing, repair, professional services, contracting, construction. I mean, it's a very broad zone. The list of permitted uses in Old Bridge is 33 pages long, and I think this zone has the most permitted uses of any zone in the town. So it's the most flexible. But this use is not specifically allowed in the manner that we're proposing it. So I have to get into some of the reasons as to why that is. So they'll be storing cars here, and those cars belong to Phoenix Trucks. Similar to a new car dealer, the trucks are technically inventory. So that means they don't belong to customers, but they don't belong to employees either. And the part of the ordinance that we can't comply with specifically says the vehicles have to belong to either customers or employees. They're inventory. So the relief that we're seeking is to more or less store inventory on the property. And I can assure you that this facet of the use does not violate the intention of your zoning code, because it's very likely that this type of business was not conceived of when the code for auto repair garages and service stations was actually written. In fact, the use doesn't appear to be addressed in any zone in town. There is a general auto repair and related services section on page 23 of 33 of attachment 3 in the ordinance, but oddly enough, that's not permitted in any zone. It's just blank across the chart. As far as location, this is actually perfect for this use. It's far off the road. It doesn't generate any loud noises. It's not 24 hours a day. And the building, as we went through the floor plan, is already configured with a large open space and big overhead doors, which works out perfectly for this operation. All the work can be done inside the building and contained within the work area, which is consistent with Part H5 of the conditional use standards, which requires that any repair be performed in a fully enclosed building. Now, there are a couple of bulk variances as well with the application, and those are on page 4 of the report dated April 22nd, 2019. So I'm going to talk about those as well. Side yard setback 25 feet required. There's an existing building, the setback's 14.2 feet. Again, this application is not affecting that, and we can't correct that deficiency either. So that's an existing nonconformity. Minimum landscape ratio is 0.4 is the requirement. The property is approximately 0.28. We're going to try and improve that by the space in the back. We'll get to the technical aspects of it later, but we're going to ask to convert that to a vegetated basin, which would provide more green area on the property. So we could probably improve that landscape area ratio a little bit. There was another nonconformity associated with the property pertaining to a loading space, which is part Appendix G of your code. There is one loading space required. It's my opinion that this use doesn't need a loading space. The reason for that is because the vehicles come in under their own power and they leave driven out on their own. And there are some small deliveries with parts, but those types of deliveries come in small box trucks. In fact, the box truck could pull right into the building and deliver the parts and then exit. So I don't feel that this use needs a loading space. When we look at the positives of the application and the impacts, I have a few things I want to point out. We already discussed the isolated location. We have a fence around the property, which is also compatible with this use. The building doesn't require any changes. There's absolutely no concern with the traveling public, as no public would be coming to this property. Given the list of all the permitted uses that are actually allowed in this zone, this is probably as low intense as you can get versus any kind of a manufacturing facility or some type of 24-hour warehouse. We are improving the drainage with providing a small detention area in the rear. And on the whole, the use doesn't really generate any objectionable noise, nuisances, or blight. And these are all positives of the application. When we look at negative impacts, we look at things that are a detriment to the community. And I'll read off a list of typical things that come up at hearings that are detriments. The first one is always traffic. Certainly, if there was a large traffic generator here, that would be a detriment, in which case we don't really have a traffic generator here. There's only 10 employees. Other detriments would include increases in stormwater runoff, loss of vegetation, the filling of wetlands, construction in a flood hazard area, increases in impervious areas, loud noises, bright lights, irregular business hours, 24-hour operations, a loss of open space, or frankly, any type of use that provides no benefit at all to the public. This project doesn't fall into any of those categories. Again, the building's existing, the traffic is extremely minimal, the parking lot's existing. There's actually no development proposed on this application. It's just a use application. So it's clear that, in my opinion, the positives certainly outweigh the negatives. And I don't feel that there's any substantial detriment to the public good. I don't think your zone ordinance will be impaired through the granting of this use, as the project really seeks to implement something that's very compatible with this unique location.
Mr. Lieber, do you want to speak to is the handicap parking an issue?
Yes.
Do you want to speak to that?
There is a requirement where we would need to provide 6 spaces, and we would seek to address that and provide 4 additional handicap spaces on the site.
Thank you. Anything further before I go to professionals?
No.
Professor, I was planning on going to the planner, the engineer, the fire marshal, and the conservation officer.
I was going to make that suggestion.
We think alike. Whoever wants to go first. Mr. Warren.
So, from the pictures, as well as when we visited the site, we noticed that most of the inventory that is parked is trucks. But at the same time, you are seeking a waiver on the parking stall length and the width. Could you explain?
Yes. Generally, design standards throughout the state are put in place to protect the public. For example, if you were to visit a restaurant that has a parking lot, it's common that stalls would be a certain size, usually 9 by 18, sometimes 10 by 20. The parking lot would be paved, it would be striped, it would be curb, et cetera. We would seek waivers from those requirements because this is not a public type of a use. This is a gravel storage area. It's common for an analogy, if a car dealership was to apply for a site plan, they would show an inventory area where I've seen cars quadruple parked in lots as narrow as, 7.5 feet. And that's simply because that's not a portion of the property that's accessible to the public. And in the most conditions that those types of design requirements would be waived, for example, on this property, if you were to require a paving of the entire area, that would be a significant increase in coverage and stormwater runoff, which would certainly be a negative. So I feel that waiving those requirements poses no detriment to anybody. And once again, there's no one from the public going back there. It's a private storage area fully controlled by the applicant.
Also, could you offer testimony on the circulation within the site? I noticed that to the south, the setback, the side yard setback is 14 feet, and it's like 13.5 feet to the property line. So also, I noticed that there are planters being placed to block the driveway in front of the building. So how would vehicles circulate within the site?
So I discussed this yesterday with the client, and the driveway that's being referenced is on the south side of the building. We could make that a one-way driveway, and we further discussed the planters, which we would be removing from this plan. They would no longer be proposed. So the circulation around the building would be one way on the south to get to the rear, and then it would be counterclockwise throughout the parking lot, which would probably be the most efficient.
I believe you need waivers on many of the items on the landscaping part. Could you elaborate?
That's correct. And we're looking at item 10 on page 7 of the review letter. There are general design requirements in Chapter 250 that discuss landscaping in parking lots. And a lot of these types of requirements involve planted islands at the ends of each parking row, certain mix of shrubs versus shade trees, sizes of the types of trees that are required, and more or less that this planting specification should comply with the township code. The parking lot that's in front of the building is an existing parking lot. It does have trees in that parking lot. It doesn't have parking islands, and we would seek to retain the parking lot the way it is today. In the rear of the property, I would really see no reason to install islands with trees on them in this gravel area. It really doesn't serve any purpose because these types of standards are written for shopping centers and places where the public are going to visit to make things aesthetically pleasing. And again, this is a gravel car storage area, and I don't see any purpose in providing concrete islands with a mix of shade trees and shrubs in that area.
I agree, but the landscape island that is in the center of the proposed parking stalls right in front of the building, it looks a little off. I think there's room for you to probably redesign and reconfigure that. I'm talking about the tiny landscape island that's right next to the proposed parking stalls.
Okay, let me just see if I have a photo of that area. Yeah, I don't have a photo of that, but I don't have any issue making that, reshaping that so it kind of lines up better with those parking stalls.
Point out on the
Yes.
on A2.
It's on the western, southwest side of the site. It's right by the gate.
Will board members see that? Okay.
Looks like a bullet.
Yeah, I mean, we can neaten it up and we can put something nice there to, improve that.
Okay. The refuse area. I know you mentioned that there is some refuse bins, I guess, but the township's ordinance requires that there be screening and landscaping around refuse areas.
Okay, let me just see here. That's J1, I presume? Part J, number 1?
Yeah.
As far as the screening, I can offer that it's in the back of the building. I mean, it's screened by the building itself. If you were so inclined, maybe we could do something like a fence around it, something, but I would rather not put any type of gates or anything. I would just put more or less an enclosure,
Mr. What?
That's fine.
just a fence, okay.
What is that? That's the 30-yard container you mentioned?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that what you were
Yeah.
referring to? Go ahead, ma'am.
That's it on my side, Nicole.
Ms. Shapiro?
I think one of my main comments has to do with stormwater management. I know that Mr. Lieber was testifying on a lot of the planning comments. I don't know if you were going to go through stormwater management next, because I see that like the engineering comments probably haven't been addressed yet.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to page 9, which part 4 is stormwater management. There's a couple of comments here about the infiltration basin. I had a lengthy discussion with the soils guy who did the soil testing back there. And what they're really testing is for two things. They're testing to see where the groundwater level is, and they're also testing to see if the soil is conducive to percolation. The groundwater is very deep, so that's not the issue. The issue is that the soil is mixed with clay and some shale, and it's really not a phenomenal soil for infiltration. So in order to address these comments, and I think I could address all of them by just converting the basin to more or less a traditional detention basin, which has a flow control structure. In that particular instance, we would be able to plant something green on the bottom of the basin, and it would hold the water for a small amount of time. It would release it through a flow control structure to the east, which is where the water's flowing today. With that change, I can rotate that spillway toward the rear property line, which was one of the comments as well. And we would detail the construction of that basin in this maintenance manual that would be required as part of the application. Obviously, we'd have to address the change in the cross-sectional detail, which is not an issue, and we'd have to grant an easement to prevent the removal of the basin, which is pretty standard everywhere.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know you had said that the cars are typically driven to the site. I think it's the fourth page of your photo exhibit that you had submitted. There's a photo of I guess like a flatbed, which probably like could be used as like a tow truck. Now, I'm not sure if that came off lease and you're trying to refurbish that vehicle because it's in the drive aisle.
Okay, I know that there is a trailer that they use to move the forklifts around. If you give me 1 second, I can ask.
Confer with your client. We can't take that unless you're sworn in, but you can go back and speak with them.
Yeah, then bring it forward.
Ms. Shapiro, the comments about the drainage, was that to your satisfaction?
It is, but that's why I wanted to hear about, because one of the reasonings of my comments on the infiltration basin is that specifically in NJDEP Stormwater Management Best Practices Manual, it says if you're going to put an infiltration basin, you have to make sure that there's no like sediment loading on the property and no contaminants on the property. And so what I'm hearing is reconditioning of the vehicles. I'm hearing cleaning them and, giving them a good scrub so they can get back on the roads and somebody can sell them. What I was concerned about is all these vehicles out on the storage and then, maybe having like oil leaks or, something that's wrong that's now gonna sheet flow and drain into this infiltration basin. I think it's good that it's changing to a detention basin instead of an infiltration basin because, this area here is under, environmental watch, especially for the aquifer in this area. So I'd rather not have something infiltrate if we're not, not that I'm not sure. I mean, you've placed it on testimony, but I'd rather it be detention instead of infiltration. So that sounds good to me. And I think I'm satisfied. I think I'm going to hear from Mr. Lieber that it's the two.
Correct. There are 2 of these flatbeds which he purchased to recondition. He pointed out there's no license plates on them right now, which would mean that they're presently in their custody.
Okay. Hard to see from this view. Okay. So, and then he agreed to the other, the spillway should be directed towards the rear of the property because that's where it's directed towards now and not to the side, based on the contours provided. And he's going to provide me a maintenance manual. He's going to deed restrict it so that the maintenance of the detention basin will always, exist and carry with the property. And then I just asked that or any basin detail, outlet structure be specific to the project that are placed on the plans. And not the generic one that's right out of the B&P manual. As far as the handicap spaces go, I see that it's in an existing area that's paved on the side of the building. On the side?
It's the left side.
Yep. But it has to be firm and stable. So if it's an area that's deteriorating, it would have to be repaved. And then restriped, and the signage should be there, and there should be 1 van accessible space. Now, because the public isn't visiting the site, I can concur with the reduction in the ADA spaces provided on the site. I would just ask that, a detailed look of the existing condition of the 2 that are there already, and where you're going to place the next 2 should be firm, stable. Striping should be, new, and so should the signage, and that goes for all 4 spaces.
Are you saying it should be macadam?
It has to be.
Has to be, right?
Yep.
And how many total?
He's asking for 4, 6 is required, so he's asking for.
Well, we were asking to add 4.
That's what I was.
Add 4.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
add.
I'm sorry. Okay, yes.
The 6 total, 4 new ones, all to be reevaluated to make sure they comply with the stable surface and the
Yes.
drainage and all that.
I think that's all I had. And then just a detail of the gravel surface.
Yes, we have to find out how thick that is.
There's one other thing, the pictures show the vehicles parked in the opposite direction or perpendicular to that shown on the plans. Is it gonna change?
Is that so they can jumpstart them or something if they should need? Is that what you're talking about, because they're backed in?
Well, they're perpendicular to the building on the pictures, but they're parallel to the building on the plans.
There actually was a comment that we delineate this in the field so that the vehicles are parked in the same positions all the time. It doesn't become a free-for-all. So these vehicles were parked before that was done. So the proper order would be that we would stripe in accordance with the plan, and they'd put the vehicles in the spots that they're supposed to be in.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Jim, all I have is as long as the fire lanes be maintained, and we're gonna restripe, that I'll be present when we're getting ready to stripe, that's all.
Yes, there's a memo from February 26th, and we agree to the comment about the fire lane striping.
Thank you. Anything else, Fire Marshal?
That's all I have.
Mr. Lavallo?
The letter I sent went to the planning board.
But you just put your credentials on the record so we, for the transcript.
Gary Lavallo, Township Conservation Officer. Making sure that you had the letter that was transferred over from the planning board. Yes.
Yep.
The only thing I have is to make sure that if there's any vegetation to be disturbed, that you file for a tree removal permit anyway. If anything gets removed, it needs to be reviewed. And then you would install a fence around the perimeter to make sure that no trees are disturbed if you're doing any site work or anything like that. And the landscaping is fine. With the trees, I just had some comments for the notes. That's primarily the majority of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Lavallo. Okay, Mr. Lieber?
Yes, that's fine.
Before I go to the board members, I'll go to Ms. Carey in the event that she has something.
Just as far as the traffic, you touched on it a little bit, there is, under the conditional use criteria, can you give me a statement as to whether or not traffic's going to increase or decrease?
It's going to decrease. The prior use of the building had, I believe, as many as 70 employees going to this property. Granted, there is another tenant on the property, which has been scaled back from what was on this property, but this use is occupying about 2/3 of the building, and they're only going to have 10 employees. So the testimony to be that the traffic is extremely low, and it's definitely a reduction from what it was.
And you'll give me something in writing to that effect, so I can put it in.
Yeah, I would do that.
I appreciate that.
Anything else, Counselor?
That's it. Thank you very much.
I'll go to board members on my left.
I have a question for the fire marshal.
Question on the truck bays?
We'll start down at the end.
I thought we do all the time.
You interrupted, but that's okay. Go ahead. Not you.
How many bays are there, 27?
3 nines, yes, I think.
Okay. Will they all be for trucks?
Yeah, I mean, the primary focus is trucks.
You have prep and repair, so that means that you'll be doing some work on the engine?
No, where do you see that?
It says here, existing building for prep and repair.
For detailing. Detailing the trucks, boxing.
Oh, you're reading in the agenda. Okay. What they do is they make minor repairs like cosmetic. So, for example, if taillight's broken, just through normal use of the vehicle, something's off lease, maybe needs a new side view mirror, something like that. But then they thoroughly clean the vehicle inside and out so that it's presentable to be put on display.
Engine cleaning?
I'm not, what kind of, I don't know what engine cleaning entails.
They do engine cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you might be doing?
I can ask. Is it engine cleaning?
I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes.
How is the building vented?
That's a good question.
So let me ask you,
Yeah, why don't we-
Mr. Lieber, hold on. So we can get this thing all at once. Just tell them what the issues are. What do you want, venting? Go ahead, what else? There was 2 of them you just said. So you can go to speak to the client at one time, so we're not going to walk back and forth 5 times.
My concern is the venting of the building.
Okay.
Go back, you can deal with your client. Unless you want to bring him up, Mr. Presser,
We have to comply with whatever the state requires, and we have to submit plans to the state, which I'm sure that they're going to require some sort of venting. So we cannot open until we get the approval from the state.
Scoggin?
So that's something you're going to be looking into?
No, we have to do it. Yes.
Okay.
Anything else, sir?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Presser. Mr. Walker?
Mr. Hart, I only see on the site plan, I only see one fire hydrant. Are you satisfied with there's enough
that's.
fire protection
It's
water
been
for
that
you?
way, Bruce.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on my left? Am I right?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So when you say cosmetic repairs, is there going to be like spray painting? You know, if there's a small dent or anything like that, is there going to be spraying cars as well, or is it, no?
I've been advised no.
Okay, no oil changes on them? Oil changes?
Yes to oil
You're going to
change.
do before? Okay, and then Ms. Shapiro, you're good with the vegetation for the, and the,
That was Mrs. Sawan's comments. On
you're
the-
fine with the basin and it just being vegetation and
Oh,
drainage?
I did hear that. Were you to put
Yeah, he said
vegetation on the?
vegetation.
I would, if it's
One at a
detention, I
time,
would,
So it can be taken down.
I'm sorry. If it was a detention basin, it would be green instead of gravel or
Right, so-
sand.
But it would just be like lawn area. It wouldn't be like there would be plantings. If there was plantings, it would be a bioretention basin, but this is just detention. So he's going to put grass and perhaps a low-flow channel, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
And
A
you don't-
concrete low-flow channel. Yep.
Okay, concrete, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Chevalier?
No.
Mr. Stoner, anything? I just have a couple. What's the average turnaround in these?
As far as how long it takes for a truck to come in and go,
Yes, it varies, or is it a day or two,
I don't have an answer. I think that type of question I would refer to the applicant.
and the building itself, does it have a drainage?
For the-
Interior, well, obviously, there's plumbing inside, so if there were,
Oh, like a floor drain?
Yeah, floor drain.
I'm not sure of that. I can ask if it's a
I think
concern.
Mr. Presser's going to get all,
Okay.
He's getting credit for all these steps.
Is Fitbit?
Fitbit? You got a Fitbit.
Fitbit. Check your Fitbit.
I've been checking it for weeks, trust me. But, you know, it depends on the vehicle. There's no way of telling that it's going to be there for a day. or
Whatever the
whatever-
rules as far as what's needed in the building is going to be done.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that's what your
Yes.
representation is, right?
Yes.
Mr. Lieber? Okay. I have no further questions. Anybody else last time before I go to the public portion? In which case, I'll give you one more chance afterwards. Okay, to go to the public at
We're
this
good.
point? 30-18Z, 3150 Bordentown Realty LLC. It's located at 3150 Bordentown Turnpike. Anyone want to be heard on this matter, please raise your hand or come forward. No one has, I'll close the public portion. Final commentary, Mr. Presser?
Submit.
Ms. Gary, would you advise the board as to the, well, obviously it would be a D3 first, and then we have some Cs, right, or waivers? Both, I think.
Both, right. So it's a D3, it's a conditional variance, and I believe the planner did a good job of going through, Mr. Lieber, good job of going through the criteria from Coventry Square, which I think controls on these conditional use variances. So it's the D3 variance for the one condition of the storage of vehicles, not employees or customers. And then it's the C variances, which are accessory parking, which is no longer an issue because, the accessible parking, because they're going to comply, but they do need the variance for not having a loading area, and he put on testimony that satisfies the board's professionals that it wasn't required.
Those are the existing nonconformings, right?
Well, the loading is existing nonconforming. Also existing nonconforming are side yard, the landscape ratio, and then they're also requesting waivers For all the landscape requirements in the parking area, the stalls, the trees, the vegetation that's usually required, and for the stall size for the trucks in the back, as well as for allowing the back to remain a gravel parking area.
And they'll work
And those
with,
are waivers.
they'll work with the professionals to work out any of the other items necessary by law
Yes,
or by ordinance.
absolutely.
Do you want me to do a quick review of the conditions, or you're good?
I think we're good. Any board member want to hear? No?
Okay.
Okay. Board members, if the D3 doesn't obviously survive, then the other ones won't be necessary. So does someone want to move a D3 in favor or opposed for conditional use?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second? I think it was Mr. Walker made the motion. Was it Mr. Connor?
Second.
Seconds. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Yes. And then we could take the bulk, the Cs and the waivers, right?
Together, yeah, sure.
Together. Everyone, someone want to move the bulk and the waivers?
I'll move it.
Ms. Chevalier, is there a second?
Second.
Who was that, Ms. Kilduff? Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Mr. Presser, thank you, your professionals, yourself for your presentation this evening. We wish your client best of luck.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure, you know that.
Yes, it has been. Always.
Right? You want the thing on?
Site plan.
Oh, wait, that's right. We need major,
Preliminary final sign of plan.
yeah, we need
Sorry.
some more votes. Hold on.
Okay.
Major, preliminary, and final. So we'll go major, preliminary, and final is all one, right?
Yep,
All is one.
yeah, that's all.
Major, preliminary, and final site plan. I will move it.
Second.
Moved in, second, Mr. Dewhurst. Roll call.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckner? Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Now, Mr. Presser, thank you for your presentation.
Have a good evening, everyone.
All right,
And I believe Mr. Silas is going to come back.
yeah.
I want to get all your-
All right, we thank Ms. Carey for sitting in on the board.
My pleasure.
I'd like to thank Ms. Carey for sitting in this evening, coming from the planning board over to the zoning board, so she's wearing two hats. But I see none on your head this evening, so thank you once again.
Thank you.
For your advice and your counsel.
This is the better one anyway.
Nice
We're not
meeting
done, we're not done, board, but thanks. We're not done yet.
Mr. Sachs has one
Chairman
more
Sullivan.
litigation
We're
item
done
to
with you.
discuss with you, so you're.
This,
I'll let you.
that matter is closed. We have other business that's coming before the board, I believe. Not on the agenda, but Ms. Board Attorney is going to speak, I think, on a legal matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. And thank Ms. Carey for handling the meeting this evening. I told Ms. Silverman she had a question about the Drosna litigation, and I just received a court order dated April 22nd, 2019, from Judge Hurley, basically giving the Drosna 60 days to file an appeal to the federal court because the outcome of the state court litigation may have impact upon the federal court litigation that they filed. So they basically have 60 days, which would take it till June 22nd of 2019. And of course, Drosna could appeal the judge's decision of April 22nd, 2019, where he reversed their site plan approval and use variance approval. So as I said last meeting, still to be decided.
I believe this started in 2006.
Yes.
My recollection.
2007.
And hopefully, I'm not going to leave the board till it's done.
Exactly.
But it's got to be done quick, because I'm
Right.
not quite sure how much longer I can
So
do.
I'll keep you posted. Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Sachs?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. I have one thing. Nicole Shapiro, obviously, as everyone knows, is expecting a child. I believe that's next month. And I think she wants to say a few words. No one noticed.
You know what, for the record, I was feeling skinny today. So my due date is June 9th. I keep on forgetting because one doctor says June 9th and one doctor says June 5th, but I hope for the earlier date and for a healthy baby. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to say goodbye for now, but you are stuck with me and I am coming back. You're in good hands with Vina and anybody that sits in my seat, as you've seen in the past. But I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to say goodbye, and I'm gonna miss you guys for that short amount of time. It looks like I'm gonna come back in the fall. I'm not exactly sure, probably somewhere between October 15th and November 1st. But I look forward to some new applications in the fall.
Well, on behalf of the board, we certainly wish you and your child all the best of luck, health, and happiness in this, in coming into this world. I wish you a good short-term vacation from the board. However, if I can speak for the board, we demand that you get back here as quickly as possible. We look forward to your presence and your advice on all these applications.
Thank you, I
So best of
appreciate
luck. Ms. Carey, did you, you're good, okay. Ms. Swan, anything? Any board member? No? Am I right? Well, I guess maybe the hot weather is finally approaching, so it's going to be cold. What's our next meeting?
Our next meeting is May 16th, and yes, we do have a meeting.
We do have a meeting, so we will not break before the holidays. So I wish everyone a couple good weeks off. Mr. Sachs, anything final?
Nothing.
Someone want to move for an adjournment?
Motion.
All in favor? So enthused. We stand adjourned.